Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of World of Sumo presents Inside the Dohyo. I'm Scott Findlay and today I'm joined with my usual co-host John Traill, and today we're joined with a very special guest, Adam Powell-Davies. Adam's only 22 and he's graduated in Japanese studies from Oxford University, spent a year in Kobe University studying, and there he done something that not many Westerners do and joined an amasumo team. So he has got a really interesting view and aspect that not many of us Westerners get to experience over in Japan. So we'll get him in the day to talk to us and tell us about his experiences and everything that he sees in that. Adam, thanks very much for joining us today, mate. We really appreciate you giving us your time this morning. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks very much for having me.
No worries, mate. It's great to have you on. Not many people can give the view and aspects that you can give, and have went to Japan and done what you're doing. So I'm definitely interested in talking to you today, mate. So let's just jump straight into it, and I'll ask you, how did you get into sumo? Like, what was your first experience? How did you get hooked? Where did your passion come from to get you into it in this sort of way?
Yeah, so I think in the first place, I was really interested in Japan, especially in sort of the Japanese language, and I started learning that when I was sort of 13, 14, and really enjoyed it. And I was sort of doing that sort of in my own time, also learning with sort of a teacher. And then sort of I think the more I learned the Japanese language, the more I became interested in Japan. And then one day I was just flicking through the TV channels and saw that we had this NHK World channel on our TV, and the sumo was on. And I remember sort of just, staying on to watch a few minutes because it was interesting and I'd never seen it before. And I was just amazed at how sort of exciting all the bouts were, how, they weren't sort of boring and slow, like 2-3 minute things. They were really quick, speedy, sort of dynamic, powerful contests that were over in a flash, and sort of the excitement of sort of from the tachiai to the sort of the outcome, the end of the bout. I just thought it was all so exciting. And so I just continued watching the NHK highlights for a while, and then got more and more into sort of the online community that there is. Massive shout out to like people like Kintamayama on YouTube, sort of putting the highlights out, and obviously yourself now with World of Sumo, with the highlights there too.
Aye, well, that's exactly our mission, mate, to bring sumo to everybody, because it is not as easily accessed now to everybody. Obviously, now that the internet is developed the way it has become easier, and it's been able to give all of us this sort of platform to push it the way we have. So tell me this, mate. So you ended up heading to Japan, right? You ended up, how did that come about? How did you end up being like into sumo, then becoming like a Japanophile, and then end up studying in Japan, and more importantly, joining an amasumo club? Because that's very out there for a wee Englishman. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I think again, like I was saying, I'd been interested in sort of Japanese since a fairly young age. So I've been learning Japanese for about 9 years now. And again, through that, it got to the point where, I was 16, 17 doing my A levels. And when it came to applying to university, I couldn't imagine myself doing anything that wasn't Japanese. And so I looked for a course, and then eventually saw the course at Oxford University looked nice, and decided to do a Japanese studies course there. And so as the second year of my course, once I got in, I did the year abroad in Kobe, at Kobe University. And I think before going out, I knew that I wanted to just have the time of my life, and to try completely new experiences. And one of the things I did was look for sort of clubs to join. And at this point, I was already interested in sumo. And I saw on the list of clubs at Kobe University that there was the Kobe University Sumo Club. I looked at their Twitter page and saw, wait, they're not all massive blokes. Like there are some people who have got more of my sort of build, like 65, 70 kilos. And so I think just seeing that, it really gave me heart that I could compete as well, and that, you know, sumo, at least on the amateur level, isn't just for sort of people who are pushing like 150, 160 kilos.
G'day, Adam. Can I just ask, before you went to university in Japan, had you seen the movie Shiko Funjata? You know, sumo sumo dance.
I actually watched that for the first time when I was in Japan. So it's sort of towards the end of my year abroad. You know how at the end of the year, sort of when like you've sort of done all the work and teachers are just like, oh, just slap on a movie. So we had a lesson like that, and the film we were watching was Shiko Funjata, and I remember watching it and thinking, you know, it's actually quite it quite closely reflected my experience, obviously in a quite dramatized way. Sorry for anyone who doesn't know, Shiko Funjata is a sort of Japanese film. I guess would it have been from the 90s?
92,
92.
I think, when I was there, yeah.
Sort of about some guys who start a sumo club, and sort of I only vaguely remember it now, but sort of take part in their local, not their local, they take part in sort of a national tournament, and it's a very like good film. And I remember also talking to my club mates, and they said, you know, they're quite impressed at how like accurately it sort of reflected sort of how amateur sumo and universities really were. I remember there was a scene where they're sort of all like cleaning up the clubhouse, and it's like it's really like old building. And to be honest, some of the like places I went to for amateur sumo when I was doing it in Japan were very much that sort of vibe, like just sort of an old outhouse, an old sort of shack. That's the vibe it was at Kobe University Sumo Club. We just had a sort of dohyo at a local park that we rented once a week on a Saturday morning, and there was sort of a little outhouse next to it where you had like 2 rooms, and one had a sort of faulty shower in it that we could use. And in the other room there was sort of things like salt, which I was surprised I didn't realize you'd use it in amateur sumo as well, but just in terms of if someone got, you know, cut and sort of bled onto the dohyo, you'd put the salt on there. There's some like water as well for sort of hot water for if it was a cold day, and there was a bit of ice on the ground, you know, you could throw some water over it. Yeah, no, really sort of do it yourself vibe. Sorry, I think I went on a massive tangent there, but yeah, thanks for the question, John.
No, well, it's like stepping back in time, going to some of those university clubs. I know I used to train at, oh no, I didn't used to train, but I went to Tokyo University, Sumo, and we've now got the captain, Peter Matus, living here in Sydney, and he, there's always fascinating little things around the club that have probably been there, who knows, maybe hundreds of years. But university life's quite different in Japan, isn't it? A lot of the time they're not too serious about their studies, but you meet some interesting characters.
Yeah, I did. I mean, obviously I have massive respect for anyone who gets into a Japanese university, because those entrance exams seem really, really hard. Like they have like that exam hell, that period where they're just studying, getting ready for all these exams. But it did strike me sort of doing some of the courses at Kobe University that, you know, some of the classes you could just turn up to and sort of write sort of a 250 word report every week, and you know you'd pass and you'd get your credits. And I think that is nice, because it also means, you know, you've got so many students doing clubs and circles and things like that as well. And you know, it's thanks to sort of the free time that my club mates had that I was able to find them, and we could all do sumo together. So yeah.
Aye. So mate, you were in an amasumo club while you were doing your studies. So can you tell us like how it works over there, like the structure of amasumo over there? I know that me and you have had a previous conversation off the podcast where you were telling me about like the levels, and like let's say level A, B, and C. Do you remember that? So just if you could give us more information on that, mate, and tell us like how it works. And obviously, I'd like to also know the mindset of the people participating, because a lot of the people are either like yourself, university age and doing their studies and haven't really fully finished, so aren't into what their career is or anything like that, or if they've decided that they're going to be a professional sumo wrestler. So I would just like to know what the mindset of everybody is, and if it's sort of just a extracurricular activity for them, or how many are taking it seriously, trying to become professional in that.
So I suppose in terms of the structure, you know, you've got the sort of Japan Student Sumo Federation, which is then sort of a part of the Japan Amateur Sumo Federation, the Nippon Sumo Renmei, and then that's part of course, the international sort of amateur federation. And typically sort of it really depends on the sumo club. So I was part of a national university sumo club, and in general the national universities are not as prestigious. This is just in general, sort of the sumo clubs at national universities aren't as high level, and probably won't practice as much as, say, like your Nitai Dai or like your Nihon Nichidai, like wrestlers who are probably attending university so that they can take part in sumo and do that. So I think most of us guys, at least at Kobe University, and lots of the people I met from like other national university sumo clubs, you know, we were just doing it really as an extracurricular activity. Some people more serious than others. I, for example, was happy just to be taking part, you know, like this skinny British guy in Japan for a year. I just wanted to be taking part in as much as possible. I didn't care if I like won or lost. The people I met, the place I got to go, the experiences I had on the way were more than worth it. And, you know, it was nice to win a couple of my bouts, but, you know, I wasn't too like downhearted when I did lose. Whereas there are some, I think, in the more like prestigious university sumo clubs, like I mentioned earlier, I guess the whole mindset is you're trying to win the tournaments, win your weight categories, win in the open category. I mean, people go, don't they, to sort of basically train to eventually become like professional wrestlers. Is it sort of you debut at like Makushita 15 if you win the sort of national university sumo championship? So I suppose there's all sorts of different mindsets and different levels. Oh, and also, sorry, just in terms of the structure as well, how you have sort of at tournaments, there is the team competition as well as the individual competition. And I think it's from the team competition you can sort of get a reflection of the levels of individual university sumo clubs, because there's the A League and the B League and the C League. And I think the winning team in the C League competition is allowed to advance to the B League in the next competition. But from what I've found, I remember, I think it was one competition, the first competition I took part in, I think Tokyo University quite comfortably won the C League competition. This was at the Kokugikan, actually. It was my first competition. It was like absolutely surreal, sort of going on the Dohyo there. But then I remember the next competition, sort of Tokyo University being in the B League and just getting absolutely smacked around. I think that's the thing, you don't realize the range of abilities in amateur sumo is just incredible. Sort of, you've got people like me and my club mates who are just sort of doing it like once a week, practicing in like our little C League Kobe University team. And then you've got people in the B League teams like Kansei Gakuin Daigaku, where Ura went, for example. And you know, that's still a pretty good level. And then you've got the A League teams that are just, I mean, absolutely incredible. And then to think that even the best wrestler from the A League will debut at Makushita 15, and above them they've still got sort of the other ranks of Makashita, and then they've got the Juryo, and then the Mayagashira, and then all the sort of Sanyaku and the Yokozuna. Yeah, it's just blows my mind.
Often when Rikishi go professional, there's a lot of expectations put upon them to perform well and move up the ranks quickly, and some of them never actually make it. How hard would you say they train in comparison to the Ozumo pro sumo wrestlers? Because a lot of the amateur ones really do train very hard and are burnt out by the time they reach the top division. So what sort of dedication did you see? Because I think a lot of these guys are sort of bred for the dohyo. It's in their blood, and some of the only way to get into the university is to get in via kindergarten, or and so their path is set. So how serious did you find those tournaments when you sat down and watched them?
I think you get a taste for how serious the wrestlers were taking it by seeing how, when it got to the later stages of the sort of the A-class team tournament or the individual tournaments, all the wrestlers from one university would come and stand by the side of the dohyo where their wrestler was, and all the wrestlers from the other university would come as well. So say like, yeah, Nihon Daigaku versus Nitai Dai or something. And if their wrestler won, there would be like massive celebrations, massive cries, something that maybe you don't see in professional sumo as much. But sort of there was this huge, you got this sense that, I mean, for these guys, this was their lives, like you said, John. And I think the only personal experience I had of sort of how seriously these wrestlers take it is actually I went to a training session at a middle school, and it's a very, I wish I remembered the name. It was in sort of just outside Kobe in Hyogo Prefecture, but a very prestigious sort of middle school sumo club. And I mean, firstly, the size of some of these guys for being like, what, 14, 15, 16-year-olds, just crazy. But then also how seriously they were taking it. I remember getting scolded by the coach for not taking it seriously enough. And he was like making the point to me, like, you know, this is embarrassing for you. You've got 14-year-olds here who are like on the verge of vomiting, like from working too hard, and you're just here like lifting a few like 5-kilo dumbbells. Yeah.
They have chunko rooms in some of those schools. They feed them up. And I was actually asking, somebody was asking today how much they spend on food, and so I asked a friend who was in Hakaku there, and he said at least $30. I mean, just to make it universal, $30 a day on food for the proper rikishi. But some of the amateur rikishi, they have to get fed a lot. Hakuho's mate who organises the Hakuho Cup, he's forever loading up trucks full of rice and food, and then he's feeding these kids, grooming them for pro sumo.
I feel as if that's a really interesting take that you brought there, mate, because not many people have got to experience the sort of culture and the inside look at the amasumo clubs in these school levels that you have. So that was really interesting for me to hear, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners are going to also find it a really good aspect, especially our other amasumo guys from all around the world. A lot of them obviously right now can only guess at a lot of this stuff, so it's great that somebody like you can come on and clear up a lot of the questions and give the answers to this. So mate, you've obviously done a lot of weird and interesting things, especially with sumo. Me and you had talked about a dissertation you had done on women's sumo for the year, I think the year you had told me was 1769.
Yeah.
So mate, I would love it if you would fill us in about that and give us a wee bit more information on that.
Awesome, yeah. So I guess this follows on nicely as well from the conversation we just had, because I think I first became interested in women's sumo after competing in amateur sumo in Japan. And just I had that preconception before going out to Japan my year abroad that sort of sumo is pro sumo, is ozumo. And so, you know, that the fact that women can't compete in professional sumo, I assumed, or at least they can't stand on any dohyo that are sort of controlled or aligned with the Japanese Sumo Association. I assumed that the same would apply for sort of amateur sumo, and that, like, you know, women just didn't take part. But then actually going out to university competitions and seeing like the female wrestlers there, seeing, for example, that, you know, no one cared if at sort of the amateur sumo tournaments that I went to, no one cared if like one of the female coaches like stood on the dohyo, because why would they? It's like amateur sumo. It's not professional sumo where you've got like these sort of traditions that for whatever reason yeah, because I mean, to be honest, like, it seems really, really recent. The idea that sort of women shouldn't stand on the dohyo is yeah, very recent. And I think there were sort of men and women sharing the same dohyo as late as sort of the 1890s, in the where the old center of sort of sumo in Tokyo used to be, a temple called Eko in, you know, up until 1909, when the Kohyugi-han was built on the grounds of that temple. Sort of there were men and women both competing on the same dohyo there, sort of separately. But, you know, I think sort of when we look at the history of sort of women's participation in the sport, it shows you how much of sort of a modern myth it is that sort of, you know, women have never competed in sumo. And so I think that's why I wanted to look at women's sumo in my dissertation.
It is, mate. You're absolutely right. It's a completely new thing that women aren't allowed. I've got some actual old photos that I'll put on the screen for everybody to see. 80 women competing in sumo, just the same as men, way back when. It's a completely new myth, as you were saying. The same as people talk about the Yokozuna rank and Henkaku and all of this stuff. Like that, see, sumo, no, Yokozuna is a rank, and sumo's like 70-year-old, I think, round about there. You know what I mean? So even that is a new aspect and all, but a lot of people, the reason I love to bring these questions up, and for people like you that know what they're talking about to come on and speak with me and John, is that we try and explain this to people on the platforms and that are going off their head, or a lot of people have got a lot of opinions about women's sumo. And it's just uneducated opinions because they haven't researched enough. So if they would just put a wee bit more research into it, they would see how wrong they are about a lot of the aspects, and about a lot of the negativity that they've got towards women's sumo is actually extremely unfounded. So I find it very interesting, mate, that is what you chose to do your dissertation on. Because obviously, and that tells me that you are the type of guy to think outside the box like that and to push it and put a wee bit more research into it. And I would just love it if a lot of other people would do the same thing.
I do find it interesting that sort of with the sort of amateur women's sumo that sort of became sort of more institutionalized from sort of the 1990s, the naming of Shinzumo, like new sumo, that they gave to that, and sort of definitely trying to draw a line sort of between sort of this new women's sumo and sort of previous examples of sort of women's sumo in Japanese history. Because I think one thing you see in scholarship, the little scholarship that sort of exists on women's sumo, is this idea that it was just always just a sort of erotic display designed to sort of excite like male audiences. And like, I think there was quite an influential article from the first half of the 20th century that has been like quoted a lot about sort of I think they call women's sumo from sort of the sort of era that I studied, sort of the Edo period, they called it ero guro, like sort of erotic, grotesque nonsense. But I think this all comes from like quite a modern idea that sort of, you know, like female sexuality is something that is like wrong, or sort of that is not worthy of being studied, and which just isn't, like, it's a completely sort of anachronistic take to make in the case of sort of the Edo period, when things like sexuality, both female and male, were sort of freely marketed and enjoyed, without the sort of like stigma that we have today. And so
can I ask I think like some of the translations of the names that these girls used to fight under, I've always found very amusing. They translate as Watchtower of the Loins, Big Breast, Deep Crevice, and my favorite, which is still used today, Tamanokoshi. Do you know about Tamanokoshi? It's meaning holder of the balls, but it's also what they use for the wife who controls the purse strings. So basically, she gives her husband, the husband has to give her all the salary, and then she's in control of it. So then she's called Tamanokoshi. And now this originally came from women's sumo, so from around the Edo period. Have you encountered any?
I have. Is that
like
from
that?
is it from a book by Lee Thompson and Alan Gutman, sort of Japanese sport to history? Those sort of names, I think.
I read it all long before the internet and everything had to be done manually and photocopied, and so it could be.
I believe,
it always stuck out in my mind. And I was surprised that people still know the meaning of Tamanokoshi.
The interesting thing, I think, as well, is that at least for the women's sumo performances that I studied for my dissertation are all from sort of 1769, and they're described in a text from the late 18th century, a sort of 10-volume sort of collection of miscellaneous essays called the Tsurezure Tobi Nikki, written by someone called Najo Sanjin, who we know very little about, but at least he has written basically the most detailed eyewitness account of any women's sumo sort of performances in the whole of sort of this Edo period. And the interesting thing is that the only sort of shikona that he gives for the female wrestlers in this were ori, which means sort of like gust, and then hangaku, which was sort of the name of sort of a legendary female warrior. But I thought it was interesting, you know, sort of with these names like Holder of the Balls and like Deep Crevice, they didn't exist in 1769 at that point, and they were sort of a later development. I think actually all of those names are from it's from a performance of women's sumo with blind men that was performed in 1826, I think. And so it's interesting just seeing like the different innovations made by the people marketing sort of female wrestling to sort of try and attract a crowd. And I suppose, yeah, that's the thing, you've got to realize that all the people marketing women's sumo in the Edo period were independent groups, and so they all had their own ways of marketing this spectacle. And unlike men's sumo, for example, which has been basically managed by, at least at the professional level, been managed by the same group, the same institutions since about 1750, when the like Sumo Kaisho, what is now the Sumo Association, was first set up in Edo. So I'd say that's the major difference between men's sumo and women's sumo. Sorry, I'm going on a massive tangent here, but sort of, you know, men's sumo has got sort of that institutional, what's the word, continuity over many centuries, whereas women's sumo has always been, up until sort of the 1990s, I think. Sorry, let me restart that. I think women's sumo has always been a bit more transient, sort of it appears and then it goes. That was the case in the Edo period, and I think also like later on in sort of the late 19th century, early 20th century, when there were sort of touring sumo groups. I think there was a famous one from Yamagata Prefecture. You know, these haven't survived until today.
Right. So, mate, you have obviously you've done a lot of studying, and not only Japanese, Japan and the culture, but clearly in sumo for what you're talking about, mate. So you were telling me about you had made a proposal to do your masters on the history of the word sumo. So, mate, I'm not only do I want to know what is it you're wanting to do with that, but I'd like to know, see with all your studying, sumo and everything you're wanting to do, and obviously you've just come on, you're a newest team member in World of Sumo and all, you're a moderator for us now, and guys, see all of you that are grateful for all these Japanese translations that are getting put out, you've got Adam to thank for that, because he's the one working close with me, producing it for everybody. So I just want to know, mate, what is it your goal is with this? What is it? Is this just for you, that your passion and interest is so much that you must gain all this knowledge, or are you wanting to give it back to educate others, or what is it you're wanting to do with it all?
I think, as selfish as it sounds, at this stage, I'm just doing it for myself, really. Like,
That's not selfish, mate. That's
a
fair
really
answer.
enjoy it. I think it would be a waste for myself to not like
follow your passion.
Studying what I enjoy, and you know, I'm looking at sort of, if I can get a scholarship to sort of support my studies. I mean, I'd absolutely love that, and I'm just doing it sort of to. I feel like it would be a waste at this point to just not stop sort of researching what I'm passionate about, and I'm also very aware, like, so many people are interested in sumo. I think the worst thing you can do to people who are interested in something is sort of lecture at them, like, oh, well, actually, what you think is correct is actually incorrect, or like, oh, you see, like, I don't know, like we were saying, oh, you see, like the Yokozuna rank, like, oh, you think it's like 2,000 years old, but actually it's only like 300 years old, or like 200 years old, or whatever. I think with my research, I want to sort of try and unravel maybe some of the myths or sort of misconceptions surrounding sumo, but doing it in a way that isn't like shitting on other people. Like,
are you telling us that's the wrong way?
Wait a minute, John, what have we been doing this whole time?
Are you going to make us redundant?
Try to take our job, doing our job, but in a nice way. I'm so glad I've locked him down, John. He's part of World of Sumo now. It's all right. We've secured it. We've secured the threat. It's all good.
You can say sorry.
You can just write the apologies for us, Adam. That's what you can do, mate. But mate, listen, I get what you're saying, and although me and John joke, me and John do go out our way to help and educate people, especially John, because John is also one of my go-to people when I'm confused about things or don't really know. I go to John, know what I mean? So we do our best to try and help people in a way that doesn't make them feel stupid or anything like that, and explain to them, until obviously some people don't like to be helped or would rather just believe what they want to believe and start to turn on us, and then maybe we're not as gracious anymore. But our goal is definitely to set out about it the right way and help everybody gain the knowledge. So I can totally understand that, and we are totally on the same page with you at World of Sumo, mate, definitely. So, mate, we've been talking a lot about amateur sumo and a lot of things. What's your thoughts on amateur sumo in a worldwide aspect, like around the whole world, all the countries that are involved, everybody, and the popularity is growing all the time. So what's your thoughts on amateur sumo on a global scale?
I mean, I think firstly I was amazed sort of coming into amateur sumo and finding out sort of how widely internationally like amateur sumo is sort of competed at. And I remember seeing sort of promotional videos from like Mauritius with like their sort of amateur sumo association, and it just came up randomly on my YouTube recommended, and I was just like, wow, it's amazing to see where this sort of sport of sumo that at the professional level can sometimes be quite closed off is definitely sort of stereotypes as being Japanese and nothing else. Sort of then to see sort of at the amateur level, like sort of how international the sport is, I thought that was just like a really positive thing.
Obviously, mate, I asked you in a global scale, just in the grand scheme of things, your thoughts, because you're British, so you obviously can't give too much of an opinion on what countries are doing and all of that, and you can't follow everybody. So you're obviously part of Team GB. You wrestle for Britain, and in Britain we've wrestled together as well. What's your thoughts on the British sumo scene now as it grows, or do you think that there is a chance for it to keep growing the way it is? And what do you think of the competitors that are getting involved now?
So I'll start with the last question on like the competitors. I mean, firstly, so me and Scott were both at the British Sumo Championships last month in Derby, and I got to meet some people I'd never met before from sort of the British sumo scene. And firstly, I was like very just amazed at sort of the standards, like throughout all the weight classes. I mean, there was a guy, Momo, was it, who I wrestled, who was in sort of the under 70 kilos category, and you know, he was just Peach Boy, Peach Boy Momo. He was amazingly strong, and I mean, I remember he reminded me of my own clubmate from Kobe University. And that guy actually went on to win to come second sort of nationally for the under 65 kilos category.
Momo's going to love that when he hears this.
I already let him know.
Because he's like my best pal. Like, we grew up together. We are best friends. Know what I mean? I trained him in sumo. Know what I mean? It was me that trained him. So his wee ego will be heavily stroked with hearing you saying that.
Then definitely. I'm sure also, Scott, you won't mind me saying that, I mean, as well, for you, in like the under 85 kilos, I was like amazed at just like how dominant you were in that category as well. And like seeing you in the open weight as well, the fight you put up was amazing. And, you know, we have some other sort of more like heavyweight guys who look like really strong. But I suppose it goes back to what I said before about you don't realize really until you start competing sort of at a bigger level just how deep sort of the ability sort of range of sort of amateur sumo is. And so I hope everyone in the association, myself included, are looking forward to sort of taking part internationally one day and getting to test themselves on that like international level. And I know we've got some wrestlers coming over from Norway in January.
A lot more places in Norway. The list isn't finalised, but I think there's teams coming from 4 countries. It seems to be turning into this event, obviously, as long as COVID doesn't destroy us over the winter. I think that it should really develop. So I'll be there. And are you going, mate?
I hope so.
Awesome, because it's going to be a sort of event for the whole team. But as far as the British scene is concerned, I agree with everything you're saying, especially the stuff where you were stroking my ego, mate, because I always do love to hear compliments about myself.
I thought, you know, it's your podcast.
But what I was going to say about you, mate, was you were saying obviously earlier about your weight class and that, because you're only about 60 something kilo now and that, mate. But you are so passionate. Like, see, when I fought you, mate, you fight like you're 150 kilo. I told you this, didn't I? Like, you fight like you're just head on. It doesn't matter that you're just trying to fight and use the proper basics. And mate, see, if you were like 150 kilo, you would be a Yokozuna. Know what I mean? Totally. But your passion for that day was definitely unrivaled, mate, because you just kept coming back, and you can't fault anybody for that, man. And that's what drew me to you, mate. You know what I mean? The passion you were showing that day and that. And I was just like, this, I need to talk to this guy more. And then of course, we ended up talking and realised that Darren had been trying to hook us up the whole time, and
Yeah,
you know what
yeah.
I mean. So it just turned into the way it turned out. You know what I mean? And now I've sucked you into my wee world of sumo trap. Slowly but surely dragged you down into the cellar with the rest is. God, I made it sound like a kidnapping there, didn't I? Jeez, oh man.
Yeah, is this what this podcast is? Is to
That's
sweeten
it.
the deal.
That's all it is. We're just covering you in honey. You know what I mean? John's waiting outside your door now with a net.
It's getting a bit weird now. I think I might just step over here.
Did you just turn around quickly there, Adam?
I had a knock, a little creak.
See if that was John. Your ass would have collapsed. Oh, brilliant. Oh, that was too funny. Oh, mate, well, we're definitely, we're coming to the end of the show soon as well. So we've focused a lot on amateur, and we've talked about your part of Britain, so we've talked about a wee bit about the British scene in that, in your opinion. So who's your favourite Rikishi? Like in Grand Sumo, like who's your favourite guy, or do you have a favourite like Heya or certain guys or certain style of fighters you prefer or anything like that?
So I'm probably not alone here, but I've always loved Ura. And actually the first time I went to go and watch professional sumo in person was the bout that Ura got his really nasty injury against Taka Keisho. And so in my mind, sort of Taka Keisho became a bit of a villain almost, because you know he injured my favorite guy. My favorite guy had to end up getting wheelchaired out of the dohyo.
All the battle hamster fans are coming after you now, mate. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. But, as soon as we post this, you're getting lynched for saying that about him.
Let me put it straight. I also am a big fan of Taka Keisho now, and also Asanoyama. So it's a shame that we're not going to be seeing him for a while, because I really love how dominant he can be when he gets his arm on the belt. I think he's really interesting. But to be honest, I have to say, quite shamefully, I don't follow the professional sumo as much as I used to.
Mm-hmm.
I think now that I'm working, and when I was studying, sort of, I just didn't have as much time to be following it. But I still follow the highlights, and I think it's great also having this sort of English language World of Sumo community where it's a lot easier to sort of just see news from all across the sumo world published in sort of your native language. And
well, I mean, mate, that's we try and live up to our name of being World of Sumo, and that's how even the team that runs it comes from a really cultured background. I mean, John, he anything in Oceania that's got to do with sumo, he's the president here, you know what I mean? And he's the VP of the International Federation. And we've got like Nariko, who's a huge sumo fan, and obviously Japanese, so nobody knows better about the culture than her. And we've got Tubshin in Mongolia, and you know what I mean, Mika in America, and then you and Graham for England to be in the same time zone as me. And see, just collectively, mate, always with the amateur we do, how long we've been fans and what we're involved in, see collectively as a team, it's a really well-cultured world of sumo. And that's how we are able to bring and present things the way that I really enjoy we do it. And I feel as if it's the best way it gets done and all. And it's only because of the aspects it's brought with the team being so varied in different time zones and ages and experiences. And I just love the team at World of Sumo, you know what I mean? And I love just the whole community. Well, obviously I do, you know what I mean? I'm trying not to have a biased opinion and be honest about it, you know what I mean? I'm sure John agrees, because John phones me every night telling me how much he loves me and loves being part of World of Sumo, and how lucky and grateful he is that I let him in, and you know what I mean? Don't you, John?
I got a shrine to you. I light a candle every night.
You were just quiet there for a wee while,
No.
mate, so I was like, I'm slinging something at him now.
Adam, you'd like this. I was talking to an ex-girlfriend when I got back from Japan, and I could hear her go, oh, what are you doing? And I thought she said, itoriechi, which means getting erotic with yourself. And then I was going, what you're doing? You're at work, aren't you? Oh, yeah, I do it at work a few times a day, and do it whenever I can. And it turns out, because I was like, what? I didn't know you were like that. And turns out she's saying storechi. I'm stretching. I'm stretching. So here I thought she would say, Toriichi being getting erotic with himself.
Well, that's all we've got time for this episode. I hope everyone found everything that we talked about today as interesting as I have. Adam, thanks so much for joining me and John today and giving us your time this morning, mate. We really appreciate you coming on and sharing your experiences with us.
No, it's been really great. Nice just having a bit of a natter about sumo,
Aye,
So thanks for having me.
That's all me and John do the podcast for, so that we can talk about sumo and we've got a legitimate reason to not shut up about it. Do you know what I mean? So thanks everybody again for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.